Hi, my name is Amber Cowell. Through much of my time working in radio at Vincennes University, I have been able to meet many different radio personalities who have passion for radio. Many of them have been working in radio so long that they have seen radio grow into the powerhouse it is today. But with all the new technologies such as Alexa, Spotify, Pandora, will radio survive? Or is radio just going to dissipate? I talked to 3 radio veterans and a rookie about what they believe will happen to future radio.
I'm Kevin Watson. I'm the General Manager for WUB and WFML Radio at Vincennes University.
My name is Tony Cloyd, and I'm a Senior News Producer for Vincennes University Broadcasting.
My name is Jake Foster. My position at WAMW is radio host, and my position at WVUB is radio host / fill-in production manager.
Dave Foster, News Director at WAMW Radio in Washington.
How has radio changed since you first started working in radio?
Basic transmission of radio is the same, and we still send a signal to the transmitter, still goes out over the airwaves, people still pick it up with their radios. That's the same. But all the stuff in the studio has changed. When I first started, we were still playing a few records. In college, we actually used carts, and so we took the music and carted it up and then played it off of carts. By the time I got to professional radio, we were using a music service that had reel-to-reel tapes, and then we switched to CDs. And for most of my career, we played CDs until, about 12 years ago when we started going all music on hard drive.
The cassettes and the reel-to-reel tapes were a little bit easier from the standpoint of you just directly dub your audio. In my case, doing news stories, you would take a soundbite from a public official or a person that you've interviewed for a story, and then you would dub that onto either a cart or on reel-to-reel to play back in a cart machine.
You know, it was audio tape when I started. I even started queuing up records on the air. Of course, that's all changed, and now everything's on hard drive. Everything's digital. You don't splice tape anymore. As far as the gathering news, again, it's a lot more electronic. You used to have to go everywhere and be everywhere, which is still important to do live reports whenever you can, but it's much easier to gather stuff through the internet, through email and faxes and news releases and stuff that come through electronically.
How do you feel about the automation system?
Initially, I was kind of resistant to it because I liked having the control as a DJ of mixing the music myself, starting in the songs and kind of crossfade and do some of that myself. So I enjoyed when we were playing CDs. CDs were clean. They didn't skip like records most of the time. And so I enjoyed that. But I do like the music on hard drive.
Going to digital, the sound is a lot sharper and more crisper. There are steps, I think, initially for me, it took me a little while to grasp. And now we can put audio onto a sound form and then edit it. Cleans it up. You don't have many uhs and things like that folks can say. You don't have to hear the long pauses sometimes that you would when you didn't have that ability to tape or edit onto a cart machine. So I think moving forward, this is positive.
I personally really like the automation system. I can see it definitely being a lot easier than having to queue up records or even CDs. I'm familiar with 3 automation systems, and they definitely make the job a lot easier.
Now, Dave, we were talking a little bit earlier, and you told me that a radio station that is automated can almost be ran from a cell phone?
Yeah, I mean, it's that's part of the technology. You know, if there's a problem with the station, especially an automated station, I mean, it's easy just to log into the system from a phone or some type of device and fix the problem. A lot of remotes anymore are automated, so you just have to set up the computer to change channels and do the right thing, and somebody can go to a remote, and there doesn't really have to be anybody back at the station, and it can all be done through a screen in front of you.
Kevin, as a general manager, have you ever been worried that since the whole radio station can be run from a smartphone or any device, that a person would no longer be needed in the studio?
No, I think that the human element is the thing that makes us different. In fact, I suppose the scarier thing to me are the services that are mimicking that are providing, like the Alexas of the world, that are sort of giving people that sense of companionship and talking back to them and all that. That to me is a bigger threat to radio than Pandora ever will be, because Pandora is just a music service, and radio again is much more than that. And so I think that's the bigger threat. But I don't think we'll get to a point where we don't need people. No.
Well, it's a common misconception that people believe radio is dying. Radio really isn't dying. It's in fact growing through podcasts and streaming services. Radio really is growing, and it's funny because even FM radio is growing. You know, at WAMW we started broadcasting soccer games, and everybody thought it was crazy to broadcast soccer games because nobody had really done that before because it's soccer, and you know, in southern Indiana nobody really cares about soccer, but in fact people really do. And we sold out of sponsors for the championship just a couple weeks ago, and we had not enough spots for all the ads. I would definitely say radio is in fact growing. And it was funny because I looked on social media and there was people streaming our service live. People who go to school in Evansville or who are out of town and wanted to listen to the game. They were listening to the game on our online streaming service. So radio is definitely growing.
Do I have a concern about the technology? Yes. Do I think it's going to go extinct? No. And here's the reason. First of all, so far over the last 70 plus years, the radio has been, counted for dead multiple times with every new technology that comes out, including 8-tracks in the 70s, which was going to do away because you could have an 8-track in your car. Why would anybody listen to the radio? And some people did have 8-tracks in their car and did listen to 8-tracks some, but radio managed to survive that, and cassettes, and CDs, and now Bluetooth. And I think that there will be some form of radio around for quite a while yet. However, it is changing the business model because we also now have more ways to send our signal out. A lot of people are wanting the phone carriers to activate the FM chip that are already embedded in most smartphones so that people can listen to FM radio locally without having to use up their data plan. Most of the carriers were resistant to that, and most of them have now got on board with it. But I'm not sure that the consumer is willing to adapt to that technology. I myself am a radio person, and I listen to radio, but I still stream my own station on my phone because it's easier. So I think that what we sometimes don't put in the equation is consumer reaction to these things. So we have to remember that the consumer drives some of this stuff. Some of this technology is way ahead of where the consumer is. And so I think that what's next will still be digital audio. I think that that's going to be the catalyst for it. But what form it takes is going to partly be determined about people's habits. I think that's why mobile devices are so important right now, because that's where most people are gravitating. Even if they don't have the same kind of car, they don't have, maybe everybody doesn't have a smart car, everybody doesn't have, the smart TV at home. Almost everybody has some sort of a handheld mobile device.
There's a little bit of fear of that, but when it comes to news and gathering information, somebody has to do it. There has to be somebody somewhere doing something. There has to be a human body putting that information into the system. So there's always going to be a job of some kind, because you have to have a person physically, currently, you have to have a person physically at a meeting or physically at a site or physically, typing or talking information into a device to get it on air or online. So,
now what do you expect next?
what do I expect next?
Such a transition, or something you would say would be better for radio?
Like I said, it's going to have to get more localized, and you're going to have to do more community-focused programming, whether it's news or talk or community events or things that focus on the community and things that the textbook answers anything that affects your health, your heart, or your pocketbook, or your home is what news and community is. So I just think it needs to get more that way, and less toward focused on a musical format, because that's going to go away. Because I myself, I don't even always listen to music on the radio. I'll pick and choose what I want from a site, but to get the information you need, artificial intelligence, somebody still has to figure out how to build that and program that and tell it what information to gather. So there's going to be a job of some kind. It'll just probably be very different.
I think in rural areas, radio still provides a source of information to the people. Yes, younger people are more savvy with the technology and the iPhones, but there's still an older group that enjoys listening to the radio and getting their information that way. And I find when I've been out in the community, even younger people, maybe post-high school age, say, I recognize your voice. You do news on the radio. Unfortunately, I never follow up and say, do you listen to the content of the news? But they recognize the voice, so they are listening, probably more so for music, but you still have listeners who rely on radio, like I said, in smaller communities who tune to the radio for their news. I think newspapers are the one that have been hit hardest by all the new technology, and some of them are going online. There's at least one newspaper I know of, nothing more straight online, where people can go, they get a subscription, and then they can read the local news for that area.
What would you like to see happen next in radio?
I think there'll be some changes, but I think it's the stuff we've already talked about. I think those things are still in process, and again, I think consumers will have some role to play in that, how quickly those things happen. I don't believe that in the next 10 years that they'll turn off analog transmitters. That may happen somewhere in the future. I don't think it'll happen that quick, and I just don't think right now that the infrastructure is yet in place to fully do away with the analog and go all digital. The other piece of that is there's an emergency broadcast component, and we've pretty well proven that when dire straits happen, it's a lot easier to power and get an analog signal out and people to receive it than it is with the cell systems and things that we have, because they get overcrowded and shut down. And so there's still that piece. Until they can overcome that, I don't think that that'll be completely eliminated.
Radio advancements have exceeded consumer expectations in the last 30 years, leaving people to wonder, is radio dying? Radio is not dying. It's actually thriving with more potential than ever before. This creates a whole new question that many will be asking. Are the consumers ready?